Welcome to a brand new week on Business Morning. Thank you for joining us. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwago. We kick off with the global oil market update as prices edged down this morning as rising coronavirus cases and tensions between the United States and China pushed investors towards safe haven assets. Brent crude dipped 10 cents to $43.24 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was at $41.24 a barrel, down 5 cents. The fall in oil mirrored moves in broader financial markets in Asia amid concerns about escalating tensions between the world's two biggest economies following the closure of embassies in Houston and Chengdu. Global coronavirus cases, meanwhile, exceeded 16 million. Still, Brent is on track for a fourth straight monthly gain in July, while WTI is set to rise for a third month as unprecedented supply cuts from the Organization of the Petroleum Countries and its allies, including Russia, as well as in the United States, propped up prices. Oil demand has also improved from the deep trough seen in second quarter, supporting prices, although the recovery path is uneven as resumption of lockdowns in the United States and other parts of the world is capping consumption. Investors are also watching for any impact from Storm Hannah, which battered the Texas coast over the weekend, threatening heavy rains in Texas and Mexico. The rebound in oil prices has also encouraged the world's top producers to increase output and exports again. The world's top exporter, Saudi Arabia, again topped the chart of crude suppliers to China in June, supplying 2.16 million barrels per day, or nearly 17% of China's record imports that month. Augusto and Company, a leading Pan-African credit rating agency, is predicting a loan book of 11% for the Nigerian banking industry in 2020. Augusto, in its latest banking report, says that local banks focus on agriculture, healthcare, and the manufacturing sectors will be the drivers of the growth, while asset quality is expected to deteriorate on the back of weak macroeconomic fundamentals and the COVID-19 pandemic. A 9.9% non-performing loans ratio is expected in 2020, higher than the current 6.5%. Industry's profitability is, however, seen on the decline due to the adverse operating climate heightened by the pandemic, as pre-tax profit is put at 17.7% by the end of the 2020 calendar year. The industry is, however, described as resilient given its diversified earnings base. All right, it's often said that the level of national development in any given country is largely dependent on the extent to which the enormous potentials of its youth are harnessed and utilized by the government to promote and sustain economic growth and social progress. In Nigeria, widespread unemployment has constrained the efforts of the youth to contribute meaningfully to national development. Perhaps in recognition of this anomaly, the Federal Executive Council last week approved the establishment of a 75 billion naira Nigeria Youth Investment Fund to help create financial support base for youths between the ages of 18 and 35 in the country. According to the Minister of Youth and Sports Development, Mr. Sunday Dare, the initiative will help create a special window for assessing credit facilities and financing of ideas, innovations, and support youth enterprise. All right, let's look at this initiative and the impact it will have on youth development. I'm being joined by Dr. Aramer Salifu, Executive Director, Africa Youth Growth Foundation. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Aramer.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, I don't know if you were listening to the Minister of Youth and Sports this morning still talk about this Youth Investment Fund on our program Sports this morning. Now, 75 billion naira Youth Investment Fund. What do you make of this initiative?
Thank you so much. I think it is a laudable one, quite progressive indeed. It's something the government has done in good faith, to help ameliorate the sufferings of teeming young Nigerians. It will have a lot of impact on the socio-economic status of young people, no doubt. It's one thing, however, to make these provisions. It's another thing to see the smooth implementation of the project, to make the desired impact. It is a necessary step, but I must warn, it is not a sufficient step. It will become a sufficient step when we are able to thoroughly, logically implement the intended activities, make the desired impact on the specific target population. We have seen a lot of incidences in this country where money is thrown at a problem, and at the end, we don't get the result. We pray and hope that will not be the situation. Thank you.
We hope so. We hope so. It's not going to be the situation. But before we dwell on the issue of strategies of implementation, now, this initiative is to cater for persons between the ages of 18 and 35. And that brings us to the issue of the concept youth. Who is a youth?
Okay, thank you so much. The truth is, we live in a relatively peculiar, situation as a country. We have a unique context. The UN definition of youth, of course, is not the same as our definition of youth in this part of the world. We have a unique context because of high dependency rate among young people. This is a country that even at 35, some persons are still living under their father's, care. Some persons are still not even sure of their direction in life because of the institutional and systemic, vulnerability that they have been exposed to over the years. And that, again, reiterates the fact that government needs to do more, to ensure that a lot of these young people have sense of belonging early enough so that, when you are talking to young people, youth, you understand that before you are from 25, I mean, when you get to 25, you should take full possession of your own life. I mean, you should take responsibility for yourself, for your family, and even for the society. And that can only happen when you have an environment that, empowers and develop young people right from, primary, school, stage to secondary, and then to even the university. It's a flow, it's a channel, it's a process that must be followed through. And if there's a break at any point of this process, you will see that there will be stagnation in the development of that person, and that, again, will prolong the period the person is supposed to graduate from being a young person to becoming an adult, a full-grown adult, taking responsibility. And I must say this, the concept or the definition of youth is relative. It goes with so many things. It goes with the fact that, we are talking about age as a factor. We are talking about, responsibility as another factor. We are talking about the stake the person has in the society as, so there are so many factors, that you can use to define a young person or a youth. However, within our context, I think we have to appreciate and understand the fact that we have high dependency rate among youth population. And so that 35 is fair enough. That 35 is something that is consistent with our reality as a society. Thank you.
Now, youth in any society are known as the leaders of tomorrow. Now, they play a crucial role in the prospect for development. Yes, you lauded this idea. What will this initiative how will this initiative help to address more effectively the problems of the youth and to increase opportunities for their participation in nation building?
Yes, thank you. I think we must look at this from the point of its impact on so many other dimensions of the societal growth and development. You agree with me that for every young person, there's a lot of energy, a lot of potential, a lot of resourcefulness, that come with the age. And that, again, must be properly channeled to the proper and appropriate, ventures. And that goes with so many other things that we've seen, in recent time, that over the years, the investment in the youth sector have been rather, stagnant or literally, of negligible, volume. And so we are now faced with the consequences of long period of neglect of this, population. And now we now have high level of, illiteracy, high level of dependency, poverty, unemployment among the youth population. And of course, you have youth delinquency as a result of that, Boko Haram, kidnapping, banditry, and so on. Now, the moment we realize the fact that this same population, they constitute huge asset for, for us as a country and as a people, and we begin to invest in this population, they have the capacity to turn around the fortune of the country in so many dimensions. The moment you begin to empower young people, you are literally empowering the economy. For example, this initiative of 75 billion naira invested, to be invested in young people, is just like a drop in the ocean. The truth is that we need to literally invest minimum of 1 trillion naira every year to be able to meet up with the investment gap that we have for young people in this country. When you talk of young people and their challenges and unemployment and poverty-related challenges, you look at the fact that they have skill gaps, you look at the fact that they have entrepreneurship gaps, you look at the fact that they have financing gaps. Now, if you put all of these gaps together and the volume that we are considering, young people in this country are almost constitute about 70% of the total population. Now, if you look at the number, even according to the National Bureau of Statistics that are unemployed, we are talking of literally almost 40 million persons, young people in this country that are unemployed. Now, that is a huge population that if you empower this population and you make them to be productive, they are likely to make significant contribution to the overall growth of the economy. And the multiplier effect is better imagined. They will be positioned to be able to take rational political decision. They will be positioned to contribute to their family, livelihood system. They will be in a position to support, the macroeconomic growth altogether. And so you look at the fact that they will contribute ultimately to the micro, small, and medium scale, sector, and thereby contributing to the overall economic, resilience that the country could possess. As we speak, this is the opportunity we have as a country, and if we can harness this opportunity and look at our priorities and get our priorities right as a country, we would indeed be the superpower of not just the African continent, we will be the superpower of the world in time to come. We need to concentrate and focus on developing the youth population, investing in the youth population, prioritizing the youth population, and that way we would not need to invest or budget so much for the security that we have been suffering from over these years, because it's as a result of the negligence or the neglect of young people in so many years in the past that we are now faced with the current reality of budgeting trillions and trillions almost every other time for security purposes. If you invest that amount in the development of young people, in the youth population, you will not need to budget such an amount in years to come. And so our leaders, our political leadership must prioritize the youth development sector at this point in time.
Now, is this an answer to the unemployment rate in Nigeria, which is currently at 23%? That's as at the last data, which was 2018.
I must tell you the truth. It will shock you to realize that that is a conservative, figure. We have much more than that. That is what we have for the general unemployment statistics. However, in terms of youth unemployment rate, it's well over 50%. If we have youth unemployment rate well over 50% of the youth population, and we are talking of about how many millions of young people, over 70 million. So you are literally looking at about 35 million persons on the street doing nothing, aimlessly, having no hope whatsoever, no sense of belonging. That is the kind of numbers we are talking about. 35 also number of young persons on the street every day doing nothing in this country. That is enough to cause another emergency in any other climate. I mean, in any other, in some other countries. We need to strategically position our young people.
All
not
right, Dr.
just
Aramer.
to take responsibility.
Yes. Dr.
Yes,
Aramer,
please.
now the Minister of Youth and Sports described this initiative as first in history. Now, you would recall that during the administration of President Goodluck Jonathan, we had the Youth Enterprise with Innovation in Nigeria, that's UWIN program. How is this initiative different from UWIN?
Well, the truth is we have a lot of similarities in terms of the motive, the objective, and the essence, very similar. We are yet to get the details of what this is going to look like, but from the little that we have seen, I mean, we have read, we have been told that it's going to be given to about 500,000 persons per year, for the next 3 years. So on the average, you are looking at, roughly around, 1.5 million persons to be captured under the scheme. And the ceiling is between 25,000 naira to about 50 million naira. Now, UWIN was a competitive process where you apply and then the panelists also will assess your application, and then the best proposals will be considered and funded. Of course, this is akin to almost, UWIN, but of course it's been channeled through the microfinance banks. And again, looking at the ceiling of 50 million naira, I feel, that again is not going to directly solve the priority that we want to solve. The priority we want to solve is how to take these over 35 million young persons from the street to having something doing. Now, to do that, you don't need 50 million naira to, to give to anybody to do that. And that 50 million naira that you are having as a cap or as a ceiling for, under this scheme can actually empower another 10 to 20 persons. So we need to set our priorities right. That is not really that you should give as much as 50 million naira, to somebody in the name of empowerment. We don't need that much to empower somebody to start, business. The truth is that the moment you're able to empower somebody with 1 million naira, 2 million naira, it's possible that the person can grow and... Yes,
I'm sorry, we really don't have much time here, but just before I let you go, let's look at the issue of funding. The minister said that the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, as well as the Central Bank of Nigeria, are to source for the required funds to kickstart this initiative. Now, there's already liquidity squeeze in the system. Where are they expected to raise these monies from?
Well, I think that shouldn't be a question, and I will say this for the fact that we have, resources in this country. It's a matter of priority. We have a National Assembly budgeting over 30 billion, to renovate National Assembly. We're not talking about building new National Assembly, renovation. So this shouldn't be a question at all. If we set the priorities right as a country, we should be talking far beyond even the volume of money we are talking about. My concern is not about if the money is available. The concern is if this money would be judiciously applied and the purpose, achieved at the end of the day. That should be the concern.
All right, let's just hope the money is eventually available, because the government is already crying that they don't have money. So a lot of people would wonder, okay, where will they source this money from? Thank you very much, Dr. Aramer Salifu, for your time. Dr. Aramer Salifu is the Executive Director, Africa Youth Growth Foundation. When we come back after the break, we'll look at the constraints to youth empowerment in Nigeria and the way forward. Just stay with us. Thanks for staying tuned. While still focusing on the youth, the contribution and participation of Nigerian youth in issues that affect their lives and national development is hindered by a number of factors, which includes lack of qualitative education, among others. And to speak more on this and the way forward is a trainer in entrepreneurship and the managing consultant at Simply Exponential Consult, Mrs. Fire Williams. Thank you very much for joining us, Mrs. Williams.
It's great to be here again, and I hope you are keeping safe.
Oh, definitely. We are, as you can see.
Oh, yeah.
All right, now you are in the business of training entrepreneurs and helping to grow businesses. And of course, you deal with a lot of youths. What is your take on this initiative by the federal government to create this 75 billion naira youth investment fund? They call it Youth Bank.
Yes. I believe it's a laudable one. I was able to monitor what Dr. Aramer just said as well. But to me, it is yet another fund. And we've had UWIN, which was a business plan competition. We're hearing that this is a loan scheme. It's like, you know, you go to a bank and borrow money. We've had the one for the NYSC. You know, we've had all kinds of JEEP. We've had JEEP. And to me, I would like the government to look at consistency. How do we create a system whereby somebody coming out of school knows that if I just want to do block making, I can have a little bit of money to set up and somebody will monitor me, you know, and I know the interest rate and I'll be able to, you know, return, you know, pay back over time and so on and so forth. So I would like consistency. And secondly, I would like us to look at the tech sector. You know, when I hear about, oh, they would need experience, they would need some 5-year financials and things like that, although I must confess the modalities for this particular fund are not yet out. We need to remember that there is a segment that are, you know, concerned about this innovation, that can come in and solve problems, but they don't have those 5-year history you're talking about. They have the brilliant idea. We have a framework we can use to actually, you know, find out whether they are ready in terms of their proposition, their organization, their economics. We have a good framework we call the POEM framework, and we can actually find out how much impact these ones can make on the economy. So we shouldn't forget any sector of the economy.
Well, the Minister of Youths and Sports was on our morning show this morning, that's Sports This Morning, and he did mention, he did talk about this initiative, and he emphasized on the youths that are in sports, those in sports. So one would wonder, is it just about the sports?
That's another thing. This should honestly be sector agnostic, in that any youth who has any business idea should have his or her idea evaluated. And talking about the her, are we going to have special consideration for the women? Because sometimes they're a little bit shy, you know, they don't step forward too fast to go into business, and special consideration must be made. The people living with disability, how are we taking care of them? During the time of the lockdown, they had a lot of challenges, you know. So we need to realize that this is for the entire country, and stakeholder engagement at this juncture is necessary. So I am a part of the Innovation Support Network Hubs. For instance, the technology sector should be on board. Dr. Aramer's, the Youth Forum should also be, you know, in this. The Chambers of Commerce, who will be serving as mentors. For instance, the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, they have a mentorship program. So they should also be on board to chip in and see how we can structure this properly. I know Dr. Aramer was talking about a process, some kind of flow, and it should be entrenched. So we should not have one regime having one idea and then it's jettisoned and another idea being taken. If we continue to work like that, there'll be no continuity. So I'd like to draw a parallel with the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, and to say that that is actually a law. A law has been, you know, to establish that trust fund was put to the House of Assembly in 2016, and that has been done. So we're hoping that this Nigerian Youth Investment Fund will also be backed by a law. If not, continuity will continue to be a wish are not entrenched, not a reality.
Now, for someone who works, with the youth,
Yes.
what, in your opinion, are the major constraints to youth empowerment?
Okay. Number one, the qualitative education, in line with SDG 4, we should be doing a whole lot more to get our youths ready to solve problems. So problem solving, critical thinking, even basic literacy is a problem now. So people would laugh when I talk about critical thinking. Basic literacy is a big issue. So right now, we should look at curriculum development. I am happy that entrepreneurship development is now part of the curriculum, even in the senior secondary school, and they have some vocations being introduced. But the private sector needs to come in more, partner with the government to set up more vocational schools, so that there is always a pathway for these youth to take. They lack capacity in business management skills, so we need to put that in. And we also need to be able to link them with access to market. Because you see, nobody told Nigerian youth to make masks. Millions of masks are being made up to now in Lagos because there's a demand for it. So by the time government with its executive orders, I think it's Executive Order 5, talking more about encouraging made in Nigeria and that kind of thing, if that pool, that demand is there to serve kuli and chin at council meetings and in every local government and as part of the school feeding program, there'll be more stimulus. And the Nigerian youth will be able to, respond to that. So we need that synergy in the whole system. And of course, we don't want things that would douse the fire, like the recent directive on logistics companies. Thank God that has been rescinded, but putting a big tariff, like a 1 million on a logistic company to operate in the municipal area, that is a disincentive. So, like I said, we need this to be a comprehensive policy, a framework. We would like transparency. We want to see, is the Nigerian Youth Investment Fund going to be having its own portal? Would we be able to check the milestones?
I think they've already created that.
No, I was on the internet yesterday, and the portal is not quite up. Yes, but like I said, we know the guidelines are not out. We do hope that stakeholders will be consulted so that the guidelines will be such that would be able to yield the desired impact at the end of the day. We must have the criteria for which, these youths will be selected. And then what are the KPIs? How many youths will be impacted? You can't just say 500,000. If you divide 75 billion by 500,000, that gives you 150,000 each. So,
all right, you did mention girl-child discrimination.
Yes, that's right.
Also a challenge. What are the challenges in this area?
Well, I am not an expert in the girl-child education, but I do know that culture has a lot to play in that, the women are supposed to be in the kitchen while the boys are to be tinkering with the cars and stuff. So there's that dichotomy already in terms of the tasks you are given at home and what you are led to believe. So we have rising stars like the late Arutile, God bless her soul, who broke that mold and went into areas where it's male-dominated. So the cultural bias is there, and then, of course, constitution, and maybe lack of awareness. If we are able to build the self-esteem of our girls better, make them know that they can do just as well as the boys, then we'll begin to see the change that we really desire in society.
What about digital divide? How do these impact youth development and empowerment? Digital divide characterized by unequal access to ICT.
The digital divide is real, but I would say that recently there's been better broadband, internet penetration in the country generally, with the fiber optic cables, coming in, rollout and all that. So there's better internet penetration. But access to the devices, cost is another barrier, and this definitely hampers development. We always say that increase in the internet penetration has direct relationship to increase in economic development. It's proven. There are studies that have shown this. So we would like to suggest, for instance, we have no reason why all schools and universities shouldn't have, free internet access, because this would only aid education. So the digital divide is real and must be bridged by all means, if I could say it that way. And of course, the innovation hubs are always there. They've been doing acceleration and incubation, and they're ready to train the entrepreneurs. They can join hands with government and really get this going.
All right. Now, what about the need for moral rejuvenation when we talk about, training the youth, entrepreneurship and empowerment, the need to rejuvenate them morally? Where does it play a role here?
It plays a big role, because if there's no integrity, there's no business. Unfortunately, I must say the leadership are not given a very good, example right now due to current, reports in the country. So moral rejuvenation is important. It's very, very important. We must be able to get our values right. So we need restoration of the old-time values of hard work, of diligence, of integrity, of honesty. So yesterday I monitored something on Channels TV about a gentleman who was put in charge of $45 million in the Navy, I think, and he did very well, discharged himself creditably. Agumbiade, Lieutenant Colonel or something, Agumbiade, if I remember. And that is the kind of example we want. And we need to remind the top echelon in the society that the youths are watching. They imbibe whatever you are throwing out there. So the family values must be restored, and I believe sometimes the National Orientation Agency and other agencies of government can assist. But more importantly, the leadership needs to show that this is the way we want to run. And it must be the right way, a way that is commendable, and the youths can also latch on to that.
Now, as a practitioner in youth development and skills, acquisition, going forward, what measures can be adopted to enhance youth productivity, and achieve stability and development in the country?
So I would say, number one, the setting up of more schools, the standardization of curricula, the entry of more players. For instance, apprenticeship schemes, can be linked up with school schemes such that during the holiday, some of the students can actually go get their hands dirty and have some practical knowledge. And then again, I'll go back to the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, who have created an employability program. And they now find a lot of funds, like from the US, like the USADF and the UNDP, are actually contributing, to that, because they can see the framework, they can see the parameters that have been set, and they can see the impact that is being done. So if we can create good systems, it would attract support, probably from various multilateral, agencies, and then we can actually help the youth to become more productive.
All right, thank you very much for being on the show, Mrs. Williams.
Thank you very much for having me, Chimeze.
You're welcome. Mrs. Farah Williams is the managing consultant at Simply Exponential Consult. All right, just before we go to Edidion for the market review, let's take a quick look at Augusto & Co.'s banking sector report again, saying that leading Pan-Africa, or rather the company is predicting a loan book of 11% for the Nigerian banking industry in 2020. Augusto, in its latest banking industry report, says that local banks focus on agriculture, healthcare, and the manufacturing manufacturing sectors will be the drivers of the growth, while asset quality is expected to deteriorate on the back of weak macroeconomic fundamentals and the COVID-19 pandemic. A 9.9% non-performing loans ratio is expected in 2020, higher than the current 6.5%. Okay, and for review of last week's trading activities at the equities market, here is Adidion Eddie. Well, last week wasn't a bad week after all, 0.6% gain. Thanks to Dangote Cement, right?
Good morning, Jimmy. Absolutely. Investors reacted positively to the share buyback program Dangote Cement promised to embark on this year, and that led to the 10% gain we saw on the industrial goods giant on Thursday. That made the stock market record its largest weekly gain in 7 weeks. The all-share index advanced by 0.58% week-on-week to 24,427.73 points, with the month-to-date and year-to-date losses moderating to minus 0.2% and minus 9% respectively. Last week, investors gained about 73 billion naira as the market cap, rose to 12.743 trillion naira from 12.670 trillion naira. The activity level, we saw 1.35 billion units worth 14.43 billion naira traded in 16,723 deals. The exchange witnessed 4 sessions of losses in all 5 trading sessions as substantial profit-taking activities on bellwether stocks held sway. Now, all the sectors we track ended the week negative, of course, apart from industrial goods, which was up 0.60% thanks to Dangote Cement. Banking shed 0.62%. Consumer goods lost 0.38%. Insurance was down 0.80%, while oil and gas lost 4.76%. Joining me now to talk about the market is Rotimi Fakaijo, a stockbroker. Good morning, Mr. Fakaijo. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Good morning, Didion.
There was a lot of profit taking in the market last week, so are we likely to see some gains?
Well, I think for reviewing the market for what happened last week, I think that it's quite an improvement on the part of the different metrics that you want to look at. We saw improved volume and value, equally increased in the again in the all-share index, which signifies that for the few results that have been released, investors are actually positive that the market will still stand strong as it used to be. And this is really coming as a very good one for investors. We've seen quite a few results, and the ones that are very heartwarming for today is the Lafarge-Wapco result, which is quite a great improvement. Though the top line remains almost the same, but we are seeing an improvement of 20% improvement in their cost of sales. Their admin expenses went down by about 50%, and also the finance costs went down by about 55%. Which made the profit after tax to increase by about 180%. And I think this is really, really heartwarming. And I believe that though we haven't seen any results coming from the banking sector stocks yet, from the major ones except Jai's Bank, but I believe strongly that more results that will come will definitely make those investors who have been very, very apprehensive about what the result will look like and also very reluctant to take more positions. They definitely will have a rethink. And I believe we are already seeing that, and I believe this week may to an extent be better than what we saw last week in terms of activity and in terms of the change in the all-share index.
Talking about earnings now, we saw some earnings come into the market last week. How would you say these companies performed generally?
Well, I think it depends on how you want to look at it. I want to put together those of last week and maybe a few ones that have come in. For instance, Total Nigeria PLC, nobody will have expected anything to be positive with respect to that result, since vehicles were not moving during the lockdown, so it is quite expected. For consumer goods, I think we didn't really have it so good coming from Cadbury and Unilever, but I believe strongly that, and also international breweries. But I think to a great extent, we're going to see a change in these metrics by the time we see the results coming from the banking sector stocks. So investors should be very much at home with the market, and they should have a rest of mind that the market is still very viable, and be it pandemic or whatsoever, we are moving forward and we are getting stronger.
Well, it's a brand new week. What is your outlook?
Well, my outlook is that as we see more results, there will definitely be a reaction, and I believe that the results, though some will be bad, but they won't be as bad as expected. So I believe that this week definitely portends a better position or outcome for the market than last week. So I believe this week will be very much better in every sense of it.
Thank you for your input, Mr. Rotimi Fakaijo. Rotimi Fakaijo is a stockbroker. Well, we'll leave it there for now. Chimi, over to you.
Thank you very much, Eddie. Well, let's just hope for a profitable week, just as Rotimi Fakaijo has said there. We'll do an opening call to London as soon as we get back from the break. As of course, we'll come back to you for the debt and currency market. Do stay with us. All right, let's cross over now to London for updates from Juliana. Hello, Juliana. Good morning. A beautiful week to you. Well, let's start the week on earnings table. Ryanair plunges into loss after what it called the most challenging period in its history. Does this tell us what to expect from other companies' earnings?
Good morning, Chimezie. A bright week to you too. I've got to say it's pouring down with rain here in London, and really it's pouring down with rain for the airline industry, who had hoped that finally, once the British government had agreed for about 50 different countries to have air corridors, so any British tourists travelling to those countries could come back and not self-isolate. But alas, you know, there's been upheaval across the weekend because Spain's COVID-19 infection number has risen, and the British government have now decided that you have to self-quarantine if you come back from Spain. This is affecting 600,000 British passengers and is a major story here in the UK. This does affect Ryanair, of course, who, as you say, have just released their first quarter profits for the year, down 185 million euros. And if you compare that to the same period last year, Chimezie, they were in profit of over 243 million euros. So they have been well and truly whacked by this COVID-19. Their bosses haven't given shareholders any yearly forecast because they say they can't do that because the airline industry is in such an upheaval. And of course, the British government deciding to stop that non-essential travel to Spain is really going to cause them lots of trouble. Many airlines are saying that they're actually going to have to cancel many flights just because a lot of passengers are cancelling them. We know that the airline industry has been suffering over the course of the past couple of months. I believe Ryanair have had about 500,000 passengers. Typically in this period, they have over 41 million passengers. At the moment, they're running at a capacity of 40%. Next month, that will rise to 60%. They're hoping by September, they can start passenger travel for about 70% of what they had pre-COVID. But nothing is certain. Like I said, this story about British passengers travelling to Spain is a major story here in the UK, especially because we're now hearing on the grapevine that Germany and France may also be reimposing lockdown. And there are discussions already about this second wave of COVID coming into Northern Europe, particularly in the next couple of months, because, of course, the weather gets much colder and seasonal flu and, you know, how it affects your lungs isn't going to be great for COVID-19. So not a great start to the week.
So how much do we know about this allegation by NatWest Bank customers saying their accounts were closed after they applied for coronavirus loans?
Yeah, not a great story. Not much of this trending in the news today. I think it's an exclusive story being run by The Guardian, which is a left-wing newspaper here in the UK. But apparently there are some NatWest customers who applied or are eligible for the small coronavirus bounce back loan, which was one of the last schemes that the Chancellor Rishi Sunak put in place for small to medium-sized business owners who couldn't get any of the other loans. And what these customers are complaining is that they actually were eligible, applied for the loan, were accepted for the loan, were waiting for the money to come into their accounts, then all of a sudden their accounts were closed. So that's really ticked them off. Apparently they're starting a movement on social media demanding some sort of answer from NatWest. NatWest have responded to the allegations, saying that anybody whose account has been closed has been valid. But again, it puts a lot of attention on the banks and whether or not they're taking advantage of customers at a time where they are the most needed. Now, what we do know is that that bounce back loan, that £50,000 loan that the government are providing to small business owners, 1 million people have applied for that. Apparently it cost the government about £32.6 billion. Last week, the Office for Budget Responsibility did write to the banks quite openly and said, you know, expect 40% of those debts to go bad, meaning they won't be paid back, and that will cost the taxpayer about £16 billion. There are no suggestions that NatWest are trying to close accounts to avoid paying these loans, but of course, that's what the headline suggests. But like I said, NatWest said that anyone who has had their bank closed it's because of a valid reason. But of course, if you're expecting that loan and then you can't access your account, you will be, you know, really missing out on some money that's desperately needed.
All right, it's a brand new week. What does it hold for business in London?
Well, it is a brand new week. The FTSE opened in negative territory this morning. Lots of the second wave issues. Of course, the airlines are all in tatters. IAG, the parent company of British Airways, their shares are down by 8.5%. Shares are down in TUI, EasyJet. All of the airlines really struggling at the moment. We've got renewed Brexit negotiations taking place sometime this week. We're not expecting a trade deal to be struck before September, but nevertheless, Brussels and Downing Street are still ploughing forward. And then it's a big earnings week here in the UK. I believe 7 of the 10 largest blue chip companies in the UK are going to be reporting their earnings, plus 4 out of 5 of the biggest banks. So this is going to be a good litmus test to see what the health of the British economy is. So lots of earnings. I'll try and remember all the data if I can for you, Chimmy, but it's going to be a busy week for us.
I can imagine. And of course, we're looking forward to getting more updates from you later today. Thank you, Juliana. And back here on the debt and currency markets, Eddie is back on board.
Thanks, Jimmy. The bond market started last week on a relatively bullish note as the anticipated coupon payment coupled with FAC disbursements spurred buying interest in the market. Now, towards the end of the week, activity improved further as the unmet bid at the auction filtered into the secondary market. And now, at the end of the week, yields declined by 50 basis points. On Friday, we saw 52 deals worth 16.79 billion naira. The Treasury bills market started the week on a relatively quiet note with minimal activity witnessed across the board due to unattractive yields. Now, activity in that space maintained its relatively weak trend for the rest of the week on limited market supply. On Friday, there were just 2 deals on that counter worth 300 million naira. Trading activities picked up in the OMO markets on the back of healthy liquidity in the system, reduced funding pressures for local banks, board participation, and midweek participation from foreign portfolio investors. On Friday, there were 33 deals worth 92.75 billion naira. But let's talk to Dayo Ogundare in Treasury Sales at Access Bank. Good morning, Dayo. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Hello. Hi, good morning.
So there's a primary market auction on Wednesday, and of course we expect investors, market participants to be focused on that. But how do you think the auction will play out?
Okay, so yes, you're correct. Market participants will switch focus to the PMA this week, where the CBN is going to be rolling over bills about 257 billion. We expect stop rates to close around the same levels. Just given the liquidity in the system last week, and there's also an OMO maturity as well, about 20 billion and a bond coupon this week. So liquidity is going to be up, and we expect it to be oversubscribed.
Thank you, Dayo, for your input on the program. Dayo Ogundare is in Treasury Sales Department at Access Bank. Well, that's it on the market review. Over to you, Chimmy.
Thank you, Eddie. And of course, that's it on the program for today. Thank you for watching. I'm Chimezi Obi Iwagu.